What's going on? What's going on, everybody? It is the Only Sports Podcast special YouTube edition. I don't even think I'll put this on the podcast just for the YouTube channel. So, YouTube channel exclusive, whatever. It's just me, no casino. Obviously, I am here to talk about the game that just happened as I'm recording this. It's about 9 p.m. on the West Coast. So, literally just wrapped up probably about 10-20 minutes ago. And yeah, I just wanted to come on here. I know me and Casino will talk about this on the next podcast, but yeah, just want to get my thoughts on this game just as an Eagles fan. Obviously just got done watching it. Me and Casino, I mean, our picks were trash for all the playoff games, but I think that goes for a lot of people. I think tomorrow on the podcast we'll talk about how really nobody had the Texans. I think we were both dumb for picking the Dolphins over the Chiefs, especially when we found out what the weather would be, because we've seen Miami in those type of weathers countless times, especially Tua. The Green Bay Dallas game obviously was shocking, and I don't think a lot of people saw that coming. I mean, Casino had the Packers winning, but he didn't predict it was going to be a blowout. We thought that would be a close game. Lions Rams was pretty much what everybody thought it would be, a back and forth 1 point game. Same with Buffalo Steelers. Buffalo dominates, blah, blah, blah. So now we get to the game that I wanted to talk about and why I'm recording this right now. Instant, reaction, whatever. And that is the Buccaneers winning against the Philadelphia Eagles 32-9. Now, obviously, I was angry during this game as an Eagles fan, but there's a difference between being angry, like angry shocked, and angry for seeing the same things that have basically been happening for a month, right? Everybody knows the story with this team. If you don't, let me give it a quick recap. They started 10-1. This season after the Super Bowl, I believe it was the best start by a team that has ever come off, I believe, either winning or losing the Super Bowl, just off a Super Bowl season. The best a team has ever done, 10-1. And then obviously they go 1-5 to finish out the regular season, and then lose to the Buccaneers in the wild card round of the playoffs. Now, during the season, especially the last couple weeks, they had basically chances to lock up the 1 seed. They blew it. They had chances to lock up the 2 seed. They blew it. They had chances to win their division. They blew it, right? In the past 6 weeks. I mean, if you listen to this podcast, or if this is your first time, after the Seattle, let's go back even further. After the Buffalo Bills game, where they won that game in overtime, I think that was probably, between that and the Dolphins game, was the best 2 games they played all season and looked like remnants of the Super Bowl team, right? But then what happened after that is they played that Seattle Seahawks Monday night game, where Buffalo Bills game, after that game, I was 100% in, right? I was like, this team, best in the league. Everybody's, even when they were 10-1, saying they were frauds, blah, 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 blah. But I was like, no, ride or die with this team. Then the next couple weeks happened, and it was really that Monday night game where it was just like, oh, this team is giving up just across the board, right? It seems the coaches have no idea what they're doing. I mean, we'll get to the coordinators, but most importantly, this team feels like it's giving up on Nick Sirianni. You kind of, instead of hearing motivational things, or, players talking about what they could do better, what they couldn't do better, it was just platitudes of things that, where it's just like, well, you got to take one game at a time, got to be better. And then you're just like, okay, but you're not addressing any of the issues. And then shockingly enough, that progressed and progressed and progressed until you got to the perfect storm, which was this Buccaneers game. I mean, even earlier than that, the perfect storm was last week against the Giants, where AJ Brown gets hurt. They decide to start the starters for half the game for no reason at all. There was no chance that the Cowboys were losing to that Commanders team when the Commanders basically punted on their season after they traded away everybody. And they had a lame duck coach and everything like that. So there's no way the Cowboys are losing that game in the last week of the regular season. So why do you have any of the starters in? AJ Brown gets hurt and he wouldn't have been a factor in this game. There's no way that AJ Brown being in this game all of a sudden makes this game competitive or anything, because it was all on the protection, which last 3 weeks we've seen them play the Giants twice, and all the Giants did to disrupt this Eagles offense was just blitz them. Not even like a disguise blitz, not even a, something where it's like, who's blitzing? I don't know. Literally showing they're going to blitz and then just blitzing. And then what did we see as viewers in this Eagles Buccaneers team, or this Eagles Buccaneers game? I'm sorry. Literally all the Buccaneers did was just show, oh, we're going to blitz everybody. And then the Eagles had no answer whatsoever. And again, that's now we can start talking about the coordinators, because this team clearly gave up on the coaching, right? Like, it's fairly obvious. I think everybody was kind of over Nick Sirianni's demeanor, swagger, mindset, whatever you want to, just Nick Sirianni. They're over that, right? Everybody you can kind of feel, especially in this game, is over the Jalen Hurts kind of like, oh, I don't like, just like the who gives a shit. We're just playing a football game, like never high, never low. Which I think that has more to do with just having a rough season, right? Because, and that's as a team. I still think Jalen Hurts on the season, he wasn't as good as he was last season, but he was still a top 10 quarterback in this league this season, especially with what he's able to do on the ground, running. He throws one of the most beautiful deep balls in the league. Uh, I really think his ball placement and his ball accuracy are on point. But again, tonight, you can try to pin this game all you want on him. They showed a graphic in this game where he had 2 seconds to throw the ball. I don't care if you're Patrick Mahomes. I don't care if you're Tom Brady. I don't care if you're whatever quarterback you want to put in that, mix. If you have 1 to 2 seconds to throw every single play, and none of your wide receivers or tight ends or running backs are getting into space or getting any separation whatsoever because your play designs are so bad, you're going to have a game like he did tonight, where really the only bad play I thought that he did was the safety, because he took that safety after avoiding two defenders, and then when you're avoiding two defenders in the end zone, get the ball out of your hands, right? I'm not saying make a Superman throw. I'm not saying, play hero ball and try to complete a pass. Throw the ball away. You're in the end zone. You've avoided two defenders. And then that was the turning point of the game. I mean, up until that point, it was a 7-point game. And I thought Eagles are hanging around in this. So when you have 2 seconds to throw and you're in the end zone and you've already avoided two defenders, why are you trying to make a play instead of just throwing the ball out of bounds and living to fight another down? That was the turning point of the game, where now all of a sudden it becomes a 2-possession game immediately. I mean, shockingly, when the Eagles started to be bad, I said the 3 players I never want to see on the field again are James Bradbury, gave up 2 touchdowns in this game. Quez Watkins, who was the number 2 wide receiver in this game and did absolutely nothing, when all week it was him trying to do this like hype thing where it's like, I asked Jalen Hurts, what should I do? And he said, answer the call, blah, 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 or whatever the hell he said. Non-existent. But even when he is in the game and existent, he does stuff like in the biggest games in the Super Bowl where he drops a wide open pass that would have changed that game. So he was non-existent. And then you have Kenneth Gainwell, who was basically the reason for that safety, who tries to gain a yard or instead of gaining a yard on a rush that is just going nowhere, he decides to run backwards at the 5-yard line and lose 6 yards to try to run from the right or to the right side, back to the left, and then gets tackled for a 6-yard loss when he could have had a 1-yard gain. Again, the three worst players on this team who literally cost the Eagles games, Quez Watkins, James Bradbury, and Kenneth Gainwell, all did things in this game that would make you, as a fan of the team, be like, why is this person on this team? Why are they in the position they're in where they're go to options? I mean, for how many weeks have we just heard the Eagles offense doesn't know how to handle the blitz? They don't know how to handle the blitz for weeks now, a month. That's been the narrative. And then guess what? In a playoff game, they don't know how to handle the blitz. We've also heard, oh, the Eagles offensive play calling is really predictable. For a month now, we've been hearing that. And then what happens? It's predictable, and you have people on TV, commentators being like, oh, they do this out of this play. And then that happens. So if you have people, I mean, I've been able to call plays from the couch because of what they're lined up in. So if you have fans who know little to nothing about putting together an offensive scheme, for me, nothing. If you have announcers who watch football every week and they can tell what play you're going to run, what makes you think the defense is not going to know what play you're going to run? And then you have, the just greatest play caller ever, which is Brian Johnson, who has never met a third and long. He doesn't think he can win with a screen pass when you have maybe the worst group in the league of getting any type of separation or space from their defenders. So let's talk about Brian Johnson, and then we'll get to Matt Patricia and Sean Desai. But Brian Johnson, been in the NFL for 3 years and has done what to qualify him to be an offensive coordinator. I'll answer that question for you. He knows Jalen Hurts. That's it. That's the list of accomplishments apparently it takes to be the Eagles offensive coordinator. I mean, at every job I've had, it's always been the worst employee or the one who does the least amount of work is always the one given the job by someone that you also work with, right? Like that's why movies suck now. That's why TV has a real wide chasm of really good and really bad, because it's all written and directed and starring people whose parents were famous, whose parents were talented, and then you just have, you know, them just being ushered into the spotlight with nothing to qualify them to be in the spotlight except who they know, right? It's nepotism. So this is nepotism without being related. This is even worse than nepotism because it's literally like, he's not even my blood. He's just this guy I know. He's just this friend of mine. Hey, can you give him a job? Like, oh yeah, we're a season removed from one play potentially away from winning the Super Bowl. So let's lose both of our coordinators. I mean, Gannon, I give him a lot of guff on the show, but at least he could put together a defensive scheme that put pressure on the opposing quarterback. His back end, you know, safety and corner and linebacker schemes were as bad as the Eagles are now, but at least he had a dominant front four. At least he had a dominant, I'll even give him front seven. Let's say he had a dominant front seven and a bad back end, but you can have a bad back end when the opposing quarterback has no time to throw, right? So we'll give him a little credit where credit is due. And then Shane Steichen, who I loved last year, and I thought the offense last year was exciting. It was dynamic. It was fresh. It was the reason why that team went to the Super Bowl and had a amazing offense. The offense this year was Brian Johnson, again, friend of a guy is why he was qualified for the job, who does the same 4 plays over and over again. I mean, tonight they were calling offensive plays where wide receivers, tight ends, running backs were in motion. And it was like shocking. I was like, oh my God, there's people moving pre-snap. What is this? And then as the game progressed, it got back to the screen play, or got back to the screen passes, to the out routes when it's 3rd and 15 to pick up 2, right? When it's 3rd and 8, let's go 5 away from the first down marker. So it's all just short, intermediate passing routes that are well short and designed away from the first down marker, which is great play design. And again, this has been going on all season, but this Eagles roster was so stacked that they were overcoming bad coaching. Okay. And then Sean Desai, bad defensive coordinator. Everybody's trying to give him his flowers as if what he was doing before was great. No, he was a bottom half of the league defensive coordinator. And then all of a sudden, Matt Patricia comes in. He finds a diamond in the rough with kind of 2 rookie cornerbacks having great games when they're out there. And instead of going with that and making some tough decisions on personnel and actually changing the defense, instead he just goes, what ain't broke, we ain't going to try to fix. So instead of doing man or cover 2 or blitzes or anything like that, let's just sit in zone all day with our linebackers who can't cover and our cornerback 2 named James Bradbury, who I text this to my friend Casino. Maybe you've heard of him. He's the co-host on this podcast. I text him to this at the start of the game. I said, watch for any bad defensive plays or big moments to happen against James Bradbury. Right off the bat, first 2 touchdowns of the game. I mean, we'll talk about that when me and Casino talk about it. We'll talk about that egregious holding call that gave the Bucs the first touchdown, but whatever. It's not like that would have helped them, or the Eagles, that is. But first touchdown of the game, James Bradbury. Second touchdown of the game after the safety, James Bradbury. Interesting. It's almost like he's a liability and shouldn't be out there and is probably the 5th or 6th best corner on your team that actually surprisingly has pretty good corners, given that 2 of them are rookies and playing lights out when they were asked to play. So then you come into this game, Sidney Brown's out for the season. Reed Blankenship's out for the game. AJ Brown's out for the game. So you have 2 big secondary pieces. You have your biggest offensive weapon out of the game. So instead of trying to, I don't know, get other people involved, let's see if our passing game has an issue. Why don't we try, as the 5th best rushing team in the league, to run the ball? No, of course not. Start of the 3rd quarter, it's 21 passes to 5 rushes or something like that. No balance whatsoever. No attempt to establish a running game. You gash this same team with also on Monday Night Football a couple of weeks ago for 200 yards, right? Let's not even try that. I mean, why would we? Right. And then for the defense, it's our linebackers are a liability in coverage, and so is James Bradbury. So let's put them on every offensive possession by the Buccaneers to show that they're a liability. So that's why you see completions over the middle. That's why you see every touchdown happen against James Bradbury. It's just like, I, as a stupid fan, and that's just what I am, right? I know nothing about football except what I watch and have picked up through my fandom. Okay. It's not like I study the game or grind the all 22 or any of that, right? I just watch the games and have a medium-sized brain. Let's just give it that. Okay. I'm not even trying to act smart or say anything like this, but I'm an idiot, right? That's what I'm trying to say. I'm an idiot and I know where our weak points are. So then you have smart football people planning against your team. So if the idiot on the podcast who knows nothing knows your weaknesses, why do you think they're not going to be exploited? Okay. And they were for a month, for a week, for a month and a half for this game. And then it comes down to the narrative wrapped around this was like, oh man, what an epic collapse by the Eagles. They were 10-1 and then they went 1-5 and lost their first playoff game, blah, blah, blah. Every analyst or sports talking media personality, blah, blah, picked the Buccaneers to win. The Eagles have been labeled a fraud for 2 months. They were labeled frauds when they were 10-1. Like this is not similar to the Cowboy situation at all, because nobody going into these playoffs legitimately thought the Eagles were going to be a Super Bowl team or a contender to go to the Super Bowl. Everybody thought the Bucs would win, or like I did, I thought the Eagles would squeak by this game and then get annihilated by whoever they played next round, right? Not in my wildest dreams did I think this Eagles team, with what I've seen this season, would go to the Super Bowl. And that's coming from an Eagles fan. People who were not Eagles fans have been calling this Eagles team fraud since week 2. So to act like now this narrative is this was a 10-1 team and they had this epic collapse and they were supposed to go back to the Super Bowl. It's like literally no one has ever said that. And they lost this game exactly how they've lost every other game for the past month. The team looks like they don't care anymore. The coaching is bad. Now let's talk about Matt Patricia. Sean Desai has a 25th ranked defense going into the easy stretch of the schedule against the Giants, Seahawks, Cardinals, and then Giants again. So the team makes the switch, which I was in favor of, because again, I was tired of seeing the defense. Again, I wish they would have also made a switch on the offensive side, but again, Brian Johnson, he's been in the NFL for 2 whole years and he knows Jalen Hurts. So we have to give him, we have to give him a prestigious job within the organization, right? He can't just be the quarterback's coach or the trainer or the water boy. He has to be calling the offensive plays because, you know, we need 6 offensive plays to choose from every game, whether it be a quarterback draw or a wide receiver screen or 4 verticals or what have you. So then we get Matt Patricia in, who first game in, I actually thought he did a pretty good job. I was like, I like this defense. He's got the rookie corners in, Eli Ricks, and I can't remember the other name, but both great right after the game. And then I came on this podcast and I was like, hey, defense actually looked pretty good, even though they lost the game. And then all of a sudden, it just fell apart. We're putting Hassan Reddick in, let's not have our best pass rusher actually be a pass rusher, and let's just put him in zone coverage where he's getting exposed. Let's take Shaquille Leonard from the Colts, who's already washed, and have him running against 21-year-old running backs in open space, right, to try to cover them. Like, just dumb. And every time you watch an Eagles game, you can read comments about it. You can see it on screen. You can hear the announcer say it. Again, it's obvious to everyone. Everyone on defense always looks out of position, not on a play here or there. Every single play, it looks like they're out of position. Luckily, there's good players on this team on offense or defense. So again, they can sometimes overcome bad coaching. And that's what happened. You give this team a little momentum and they can go on a run like when they were 10-1. But when the house of cards falls, everyone looks like the Joker, right? In terms of cards, because everyone starts playing like they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. Again, that comes to coaching. So do I want Nick Sirianni gone? I wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, we got rid of Doug Peterson and he won a Super Bowl. And a Doug Peterson coach team never looked as bad as this Nick Sirianni coach team. And then you think he probably lost the locker room. I would bet to dollars to donuts he did. And then, but when it comes to Nick Sirianni, you can make the case for me to keep him or get rid of him. I'm torn. For offensive and defensive coordinators, fire everyone on both sides of both sides of the ball, and get new coaching staffs over everybody. And that's why I would say I'd probably be more leaning towards get rid of Nick Sirianni, bring in a Mike Vrabel, bring in a Bill Belichick, have them bring in new defensive and offensive coordinators, and then we'll go from there. Because this team is too talented and has too much talent on it. In, again, what was a season that appears to be pretty wide open, especially from what we've seen from the Texans or the Packers, or, what the Browns did at the end of the season, what the Steelers were doing at the end of the season. It felt like this year and probably next year, maybe the next 2, who knows? It feels like the NFL's open, right? Like the NFL playoffs are wide open. All you have to do is get to the playoffs and then just go from there, right? So This went longer than I thought it would, but I just had to do an Eagles rant. I'm not again, there's been games where I've been mad that we lost. This one from the get-go, I was like, we're losing this game because of this all the reasons I just said. I'm not mad because I didn't think this team would go anywhere, right? I thought farthest I thought they could go was barely squeak out this game and then lose horribly next week. That was the end cap. I never saw a scenario where they were going to the NFC Championship, let alone the Super Bowl. So this narrative that like, oh, this is a worse loss than Dallas. It's like the Dallas loss. It's like how there were legitimate football analysts picking Dallas to go to the Super Bowl. Nobody was picking this Eagles team to go anywhere. What are we like now? But now we're trying to be like, they was such a bad loss. This was the favorite. And then it was like, I've seen what Cowherd did his top 10 playoff teams. The Eagles weren't even on it. Like, well, it's just, again, I get more upset about the narrative and the rewriting history after something like this than what the game actually happened. Because I'm pretty sure you can go back and listen to our last podcast. I was like, I think the Eagles will win, but I wouldn't be shocked if they lost, and I'm not shocked. I mean, at halftime, I was like, oh, maybe they could do this. They're only down by a touchdown. They get the ball back, and then the safety happens. And before even the touchdown, after the safety happened, once the safety happened, I just threw my hands up and I was like, that's it. It's done. There's no way they're coming back for this. Then they're down by 16. They kick a field goal, and then there's a penalty, and then it's 4th and 5, and they do one of the worst 4th and 5 attempts you're ever going to see. Does not happen. And then it's just like, oh, Bucks get the ball, and now it's 16, and now they go right down the field. And then it's just like, okay, well, yeah. I haven't seen a lot of bad Jalen Hurts games that I would literally put the blame on him. And this is not one of them, but this game was not on him. Again, I think the protection and picking up the blitz and whatever the hell was happening on defense were the issues. Hurts, the only play in this game that I put solely on his shoulders is that safety. I mean, he held onto that ball so long in dangerous territory. It was shocking. Shocking that a quarterback at any level would think that's a good idea to not just throw it away when you've already avoided 2 defenders. But yeah, I'm just the silver lining is thank God I don't have to watch this team again this year. Hopefully next year they get in a Vrabel or a Belichick, or they keep Sirianni and just get different offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. As long as they can keep the core together of Hurts, this offensive line. Kelsey's going to probably retire, which is going to be a huge loss. But the other guys on the offensive line, you got weapons on the defense. Again, I like the young cornerbacks. I like what I've seen from Sidney Brown. I would like Reed Blankenship to be in select plays. I don't think you should ever put him as in coverage. I think he's a great tackling safety. So if you want to bring him up in the box as a sub linebacker or something like that, I don't know. But again, I like the pieces on this Eagles team. I think with the right coaching, you get a season like last year where this is a team capable of going to the Super Bowl. Now, capable of winning it is another story, but I think with the right coaches calling the plays, I mean, how many times did we hear it this season where it was like announcers, the Manning cast, people online, the sports media just shocked by how egregious the play calling on both sides of the ball were. Like, there were football pros offended by how bad the offensive play calling and defensive play calling were, right? Like, literally offended, not just like this bad defense, this bad offense, offended that there are people calling these plays, which I think is the biggest red flag about what happened this season. So I would not be shocked if tomorrow morning, obviously I'm recording this Monday night right after the game, but tomorrow morning on Tuesday, I would not be shocked if Casino and I are doing the next episode of Only Sports Podcast and we're not talking about this Eagle staff being fired, wiped out, whatever. But yeah, this was just Will from the Only Sports Podcast opinions on his Eagles losing to the Tampa Bay, and just what a weird season it was. What a weird season. Highest of highs, lowest of lows. I wouldn't say highest of highs. Probably medium highs, very, very dark lows. But this, honestly, this isn't even the darkest low of the season. And I know this season just ended, but that losing to the Cardinals was probably my rock bottom of the season. So everything after that's kind of just been almost an improvement. But uh yeah. So I'm Will. It's been a YouTube exclusive for the Only Sports Podcast.